Imagine this, a sacred ritual. Everything is being done perfectly. The actions are precise, the materials are pure. But what if a single fleeting thought in the mind of the priest could unravel the entire thing? Well, today, we're diving into an ancient concept that places an immense, almost unbelievable amount of power on human intention. Okay, so let's get right into it. The ancient laws around sacrifices present this incredible puzzle. And the question at its heart is simple. How powerful is a thought, really? Can a priest's inner intention, something totally invisible to the outside world, actually have the power to disqualify a holy offering? The answer, it turns out, lies in this fascinating concept called Piggul. So, what is Piggul? To put it simply, it's what you call a sacred offering that gets invalidated because the priest had the wrong thought at the wrong time. Specifically, if the priest is performing the ritual and thinks about eating or burning part of the sacrifice outside of the allowed time or place, that thought alone can make the whole offering unfit. The action can be perfect, but the thought is what disqualifies it. Wild, right? Now, this sounds incredibly powerful, almost like a mental superpower. But the system isn't just random. The ancient sages actually built this really sophisticated framework with very clear limits. It's not like every single stray thought has this kind of disqualifying power. There are rules to this. And this brings us to our first big logical question. What happens if the priest has an improper intention about something, well, something completely absurd? Like, what if he thinks about eating a part of the animal that nobody would ever eat? Does that still count? The Mishnah gives us a super clear answer here. An intention to eat the actual meat of the offering improperly? Yeah, that could disqualify it. But an intention to eat something totally inedible, like the animal's hide or its bones or its horns, in that case, the thought has zero legal effect. The offering remains perfectly valid. So this reveals our first major principle. For an intention to actually matter in this system, it has to be plausible. It has to be grounded in reality. An absurd or impossible thought is legally powerless. Okay, that makes sense. The thought has to be realistic. But what about the quantity? Does an improper thought about eating even the tiniest speck of meat disqualify the whole offering? Or is there like a minimum threshold? And yep, there's another limit. The Mishnah specifies a minimum amount, which is known as a kezayet, basically the size of an olive. If the priest's improper intention is about an amount of meat that's smaller than an olive, it's considered legally insignificant. The thought is literally too small to matter, and the offering is still good to go. Now, this leads to a really interesting puzzle about how the law categorizes these thoughts. What if the priest has two separate improper thoughts, one about eating half an olive's worth and another about burning half an olive's worth? You'd think, okay, half plus half equals a whole, right? Problem. But nope. The law treats eating and burning as totally separate categories. They don't combine to meet the threshold, so the offering is still fit. So we've got the basic rules down, plausibility and quantity. But now we get to the main event, the central logical puzzle of this whole thing, which is this kind of sacrificial domino effect. This is where things get really nuanced. What happens with parts that are connected to the main offering but are kind of legally distinct? And the classic example they use is a pregnant animal that's brought as a sacrifice. What's the deal with the fetus inside it? The Mishnah starts us off with a clear ruling. If the priest has an improper thought that's focused only on the fetus, like he thinks about eating the fetus outside the permitted time, this has no effect on the mother animal. The main sacrifice is not rendered piggul. It stays fit. Now that seems simple enough, but it's really just setting the stage for a much deeper principle. Because then the Gemara brings in this statement by Rabbi Eliezer that reveals this fascinating asymmetry. He says, look, if you disqualify the main offering, its fetus is also disqualified. But if your disqualifying thought is only about the fetus, the main offering is not disqualified. It's a one-way street. And this is a brilliant way to picture the first part of his logic. Think of it exactly like a domino effect. If the priest has that improper thought about the mother animal, the main sacrifice, its legal status flips to disqualified. And that status then flows downward, automatically knocking over the next domino and disqualifying the attached fetus. So, the really crucial point here is that legal status flows from the primary object to the secondary one. The mother animal is the primary sacrifice. The fetus is secondary. What happens to the primary dictates what happens to its attachments. It's a really clear top-down hierarchy. But just like Rabbi Elazar pointed out, this logic is a one-way street. It doesn't just work in reverse, and understanding this part is the key to getting the whole system. Let's look at it from the other direction. If the priest's improper thought is only about the secondary item, the fetus, that intention is contained. It does not flow upward to affect the primary sacrifice. The mother animal remains completely fit for the ritual. So, to put it all together, an improper thought about the main sacrifice creates that domino effect, disqualifying both. But an improper thought focused only on the fetus has no effect on the main sacrifice. It's just a beautiful example of asymmetrical legal logic. And boom, this gives us the second major principle we've uncovered. In this whole system of sacrificial law, legal status flows hierarchically. It moves from the primary object down to the secondary, but it never, ever flows from the secondary back up to the primary. And this isn't just some weird one-off rule about a fetus. The Gemara makes it clear this is a consistent rule. The same primary to secondary logic applies to other pairs, too, like the relationship between the parts of an animal meant for the altar and the rest of the meat. It's a foundational principle. So, okay, we've walked through some very specific, very ancient rules. But why does any of this matter to us? What can we really take away from all this intricate legal reasoning? Well, let's just recap what we figured out. We've seen that in this system, intention has very real power, but it's held in check by plausibility. We've seen there's a minimum threshold before a thought even has consequences. Legal status can flow in a strict, one-way, hierarchical direction. And finally, different types of intentions, like eating versus burning, are kept in their own separate legal boxes. You see, this is so much more than just a dusty list of regulations for an ancient temple. What we're actually looking at is a highly sophisticated and nuanced system for thinking about the abstract. It's a framework for weighing the power and the limits of something we can't even see, human intent. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This ancient framework grappled with huge concepts like intent, plausibility, and hierarchy. So the question for us is, how do our own modern legal and ethical systems weigh the power and the limits of a person's inner thoughts? The puzzle, as it turns out, is absolutely timeless.